Hey guys, I wanted to just do a quick recap of some of the things that you have learned over the past couple days worth of lessons. So I'm going back to the day that was about drugs and pregnancy, and I just wanted to touch on some of the highlights. Drinking alcohol while a woman is pregnant leads to ADD, language difficulties, learning disabilities, impulsive behavior, and poor judgment. I don't want you at all to think that if you have ADD or somebody that you know has ADD, that it means that their mom drank while they were pregnant, because that is not true. This just means that the chances of a child having a learning disability or ADD are much magnified if a woman is drinking while she is pregnant. Okay, so I want to clarify that. This was a good little video. I think it's hard to find videos about kids with fetal alcohol syndrome because people are ashamed, and kids are under 18 and they don't want all their business put out there. But I really have a lot of respect for the mother in this video who admitted, yes, I was a party girl. She said they never talked about getting rid of the baby, and they had her, and you're able to see the differences between the girl with fetal alcohol syndrome and her younger sister. So keep that in mind when you're watching it, that the older sibling is the one with fetal alcohol syndrome. Okay, and she definitely acts younger. Here's some physical traits of a child with fetal alcohol syndrome. And one of the questions that it asked you was about social consequences, or how does it affect a child socially? And I think that if a child looks different, that makes them a target for bullying. So that could have been one of your answers for that. One of the other questions was about why it is so difficult to prevent things from happening during the first trimester. And the reason is that a lot of times women don't know they're pregnant until they've missed their menstrual cycle 1 or 2 times, which means they could be anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks pregnant before they even know they're pregnant. So that means the damage has already been done if she has been drinking and smoking. Here are the effects of smoking on a fetus. So I'm going to talk more about the terrible chemicals that are in smoking. Some of you put tobacco, and that's not the answer that I was looking for. Some of you wrote down the things on this slide, which were nicotine and carbon monoxide. And yes, those are very difficult for a baby. Nicotine is a stimulant, so you're speeding up the baby's heart rate and breathing and all that stuff. Like we talked about stimulants like cocaine before. Well, nicotine is also a stimulant. And then carbon monoxide is what some people actually use to take their own lives. Okay. So if you have too much carbon monoxide in the air, this is why you have a carbon monoxide detector in your house, because carbon monoxide will rob you of the oxygen in your body. And when you get too little oxygen, then you would die. So it is like making a baby breathe through a narrow straw if the mother is smoking. I also want to point out on here about where it says children are more likely to develop asthma. Okay, again, just because you have asthma does not mean that you were exposed to secondhand smoke, but a child who is exposed is more likely to have asthma. Babies are also more likely to die from sudden infant death syndrome. So this is something that's very sad to talk about, but during the first year of your baby's life, any baby at all is susceptible to having SIDS, dying from SIDS. So you go lay your baby down for a nap, you go relax for a little while, catch up on housework. You are like, well, I haven't heard my baby make any noise lately. I go check in the nursery and the baby is dead. Like there's no explanation for why the baby died. It's not the same as like them getting smothered by, underneath a pillow or a blanket. It literally is just no explanation for death. And that is more likely to happen to babies of smokers. Also, babies are going to be premature. And so that can cause complications with delivery, and the mother could actually bleed excessively and die or lose her baby during delivery. What are some of those chemicals that I mentioned? There are about 4,000 chemicals in tobacco smoke. Also, a lot of those chemicals are also in e-cigarettes. So I want to point that out. But this picture shows you some of the things that are hard to pronounce, but they are in some of the things like insecticides and toilet cleaners and poisons that you would not want to put in your body. Okay. So these are some of the things that you could have put for what your baby would be exposed to. I realized that this was not in, I think, any of the resources that I gave you. So if you put nicotine and carbon monoxide, I totally understand why, because that was mentioned, but I just want to show you some of these other ones. So for day 6, it was about cars, operating cars and doing risky behaviors while you're under the influence of illegal drugs and alcohol. And I do want to tell you that the next lesson, day 7's lesson, is going to be even more about alcohol. But I do want to go over day 6 so I don't forget. So I hope you took the time to watch this video. I also attached an article about this particular school. So in California, I believe every year they have like a contest where high schools can enter by making a video. And I get it. The video was, you know, a little cheesy in some parts with some of the music. And these are not professional actors. These are actually high school students. But they tried to make it as realistic as possible. And this school actually did this every year. And it's pretty interesting that I forget what year it was, but they were preparing to do the presentation for this, you know, the assembly. And they actually had some students who died in a wreck. And so they ended up not creating the video until the next year so that they could be sensitive to the families. But those teenagers, I think they were coming home from a concert and there was marijuana and alcohol found in the car. They were speeding, and the driver lost control. I believe he was a football player. So it's a pretty sad story. And, you know, I'm sure there were lots of hard lessons learned from that. So if you haven't watched that video, please go back and watch it. I'm not going to read all this to you, but we know that alcohol is linked to about 40% of motor vehicle crashes. So it is important to be careful. You know, you should not be drinking if you're under 21 anyways, period. But if something happens, you need to make sure that you are being safe and not driving or riding with a drunk driver. Okay, marijuana. A lot of times students try to say, oh, marijuana is not as bad as alcohol. You know, it doesn't affect your driving. That is not true. Marijuana has been proven to slow reaction time, mess up your judgment, and make your coordination off, which those are all important things for somebody who is driving. People who use cocaine and meth, which we know are very strong stimulants, they make drivers aggressive and reckless. Sedatives are the opposite of stimulants. You know, those are depressants, and they're going to cause dizziness and drowsiness so people can fall asleep at the wheel. And most states have zero tolerance laws for drugs. So even though we say the legal limit for alcohol is 0.08, right? That is for someone who is 21 years old. If you are under 21, there is no legal limit. If you have any alcohol in your system that registers on that breathalyzer, you are getting charged. So with drugs, we can't really do a test to see how much drugs is in your system like we can with alcohol. So any drugs, if they think that you are high and they make you take a drug test, then any drugs in your system, you are getting charged with a DUI. So those are things you do not want to have on your record. Okay, so marijuana is the drug most often found in the blood of drivers involved in crashes. Remember, THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, is the mind-altering ingredient in marijuana. That's what sets it apart from alcohol. And we don't always know which drugs have the worst effects because we're not running around asking people to do drugs and then drive so that we can test that out. You should have done the blood alcohol content calculator activity. So if you wrote your answers down, hopefully that made that easier to go into the form and do that. And I like to do that so that you can see how alcohol affects people. I mean, you honestly could play around with it and put your own weight in there. And I'm not encouraging you to drink at all. I just think it's interesting to see, okay, if I weigh this amount and I have this many drinks, what would my blood alcohol concentration be after a certain amount of time? So the first example is for a normal sized beer. They have about 4% alcohol in them. We say they wait an hour before they do the test, and this person still had some alcohol in their system. Okay, the second example was just showing you if someone had like a mixed drink. Okay, so a mixed drink is going to have 1 shot of liquor in it. There's different types of liquor in North Carolina. You have to buy that at the ABC store, Alcoholic Beverage Control. And it would be mixed with something else, juice or soda. And we say that the alcohol is 40% alcohol in the liquor. So then you were able to see what that person's BAC was. The third example is just showing you wine, a standard glass of wine. The last example is someone who has been binge drinking. Okay, so it's actually 4 drinks in 2 hours for a female, 5 drinks in 2 hours for a male. But this particular calculator I gave you did not ask about whether the person was male or female. So 5 12-ounce beers in 2 hours, that's binge drinking, and you should have seen what their BAC would be. Okay, so again, remember, if you're caught speeding or you run a red light or your tail light is out and you get pulled over and they see anything, or you're slurring your words a little bit, maybe your eyes are bloodshot, maybe they can smell a little bit of alcohol in your breath still. Any of those things, they can make you take a breathalyzer test. If you're under 21 and there's any alcohol, you are going to get an underage drinking ticket, as well as the ticket for driving under the influence. Okay, remember, there's a difference between influence and intoxication, right? Intoxicated means you're drunk. So yes, the 0.08 would be the level that they would say, if you're over that, then you are drunk. But under the influence can be if there's anything in your system. Okay, so there's some stuff about risky behaviors, how to avoid risky behaviors, and you've probably already gone through all this stuff. So this is what the original worksheet looked like, and what I had you do was just, a different version of that. I'm going to show you one more thing, because if we were actually in class, I would have given you multiple scenarios and had you go to different websites to see if they give you the same calculations. So this is not even one of the sites that I usually use, but LifeLock actually does, they sell breathalyzer things that you can put on your car. So some people are actually forced to do that. And I was playing around with this earlier. So let's just put, 2, I don't even know. Sorry, guys. I don't really know that much about alcohol. Let's put 2 Coronas. And I really would like to put this as 0. Maybe I can just put a 0 right there. No.